Welcome to all of our Holy Family community. We hope this video will begin to give you some information about all the different topics that we have been working on here at Holy Family during the summer to begin to reopen the school safely for all of our students and our staff. Please know that the presentation that we are about to give you is based on current information that we have. So as we all know, this information changes. But as of today, this is the information that we are working on. Our Catholic schools in the Diocese of Austin have a subcommittee of which I'm a part. And this subcommittee has looked at minimum standards for reopening all Catholic schools. And so I feel very comfortable being able to take some of that information and apply that to Holy Family, which I'm grateful to be able to do. Also know that the information that we are basing our reopening on comes from TEA, Texas Education Agency, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and also from the governor's office here in the state of Texas. Please know that the guidelines that you'll see here are guidelines that we're working on right now, and also our intention is to be a little stricter at the beginning of the school year with our guidelines to keep the schools open. It's important to know that it's easier to loosen guidelines rather than to make them more strict as the year goes on. So our hope is to be more strict, keep everybody safe and healthy, and that way the doors can stay open. The topics that we'll be covering today are in three main categories. We'll talk about procedures and information about what the new school year will look like. We'll also talk about information about what Mass will look like for your students at the beginning of the school year. And this will take us through September as far as Mass goes. And then we'll also talk about information about the new health procedures for the school year. One thing that's important to note is that training is very important, and it starts with us here at school. So we'll make sure that our faculty and staff have the training that they need to feel comfortable about coming back to school as well. We are beginning to send out training modules from Johns Hopkins Hospital that are considered very strong guidelines for opening schools back up. So our teachers are beginning to get those modules at home. We'll also do some training during our August in-service. So one topic that many of us are already familiar with are the personal protective equipment pieces that are needed to keep us all safe. So we are taking a look at what would be required here at school and what would be best practices for our students and our staff. One thing to note is that the Texas Education Agency is providing all public and private schools, including Holy Family, with a certain amount of PPE. So we will be receiving a supply of both reusable and disposable masks for all of our students and our staff. We'll also be receiving gloves, hand sanitizer, thermoscan thermometers, and face shields for our adults. Holy Family is also exploring the ability to purchase face shields for all of our students, since that seems to be a more comfortable alternative to cloth masks. They're also easier to sanitize. So we are looking at being able to purchase all of those for our students as well. One thing to note is that we will require face shields or some kind of face covering for our students and our staff if they're not able to maintain social distancing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the classrooms. We'll also be checking temperatures of our employees and students daily. We do have multiple thermometers, and we will be doing that at each of the main entrances to our buildings. We'll have a pre-screening form that will be filled out by employees and students' parents each Monday morning. At the end of this video, we'll have a pre-screening form example for you that'll have questions that are most likely to be asked. We'll have hand sanitizer in each of the classrooms, and we'll also have them at the openings of each of the main doors of the buildings. Hand washing with soap and water will be scheduled at least 4 times a day during the school day. So that's actually something we'll put into our daily schedules and into our lesson plans. Of course, that's going to take a little bit of instruction, so we'll make sure that we do that with the students at the beginning of the school year. Some communication pieces that'll be in place for all of our visitors and everyone that enters the campus. We'll have signs on all of the main doors of our buildings. There'll be 2 main signs that'll be on each door. One will tell you when you should stay home. It'll have a list of symptoms, and it'll also say that you are consenting to be healthy if you enter the building. And then the other one will just remind everyone that face masks must be worn in all common areas, including hallways, as they enter our buildings. So what does the classroom look like? We are still developing all of these ideas, but here are some of the things that we have been thinking about. Social distancing, of course, is something that has become a very familiar term to all of us adults. But for children, social distancing and the awareness of what 6 feet away looks like is a little more difficult. So we want to put some things in place that makes it easier for our students to keep social distancing in place and at the same time have a rich and enjoyable learning experience. Our classroom spaces are being designed to make sure that we have a minimum of 45 square feet of space for each individual, which would include students and adults that are in the classroom. We'll make sure that the doors are open to the classrooms and the offices to reduce the amount of touching handles that happens, and then also to allow for a little bit better flow of the air. We'll have guidelines for wearing the masks and the shields. So one thing we'll begin to talk to children about is that if they are sitting at their desks, they can remove their mask if they feel comfortable doing so. But when they leave their desk, they're no longer able to guarantee 6 feet between them and someone else, and so they would put their mask back on. So if they're going to the pencil sharpener, they're going to the restroom, they're going to refill their water bottle, they put their mask back on. Of course, children can always keep their masks on, whether they're at their desk or not, but the social distancing guidelines that we give them will help them to see that. One thing that we are very fortunate is that our tile on our floors are 2 feet square feet. And so if you look at 3 of those, you have 6 feet of distance. So we'll begin to instruct the kids about what that looks like as well. We're also going to limit the amount of class groupings for both our students and our teachers. We'll make sure that there are not a lot of changing of classes and transitions. This will require some adjustment to our schedule, especially at the beginning of the school year. But what we are looking at is having students stay in the same classroom, and several teachers will come in and teach them. That way we are not changing classes and constantly having to sanitize desks because of cross-contamination. We're also looking at ways to make sure, though, that our teachers are safe as well. So it would be important for our teachers not to be exposed to 6 to 8 different groups of students a day. So we're looking at small cohorts where several teachers, 2 or 3 teachers, would be teaching 1 or 2 different groups of kids a day. So we are doing a lot of work on the schedule, and we'll make sure to give you more information as we get closer to August about what that will look like. One thing to note about the classrooms is that children 5 and under are not recommended to have masks. It's not developmentally appropriate for them. So we are making sure that we're taking a special look at pre-K and kindergarten classrooms and how those would be designed to keep those children and those staff members safe. Snack and lunches. So, we always knew that at some point, our 20 years of eating at our desks and in our classrooms would come in handy. And so here we are, we've got it. So Eating in our classrooms is not a difficult thing to do. We've kind of designed our snacks and lunches around that. So that is currently the recommendation, and Holy Family is ready to do that. But some other things to just kind of keep in mind with snack and lunches. We will not have any shared snack items. So all students, including the littlest ones, will be bringing their own individually wrapped food items. That will keep the ability to switch out snacks to a minimum. And also, students can bring their own sack lunch, or they can still order through the Daily Spread, which is the vendor that we use for hot lunches. The Daily Spread has always packaged their food in individually wrapped containers with the student's name on it. And so our goal will be to make sure that there are a minimum number of hands that come into contact with those containers between when they are wrapped and purchased, and then when we give those to the students. The last thing, of course, students will eat at their desks, but it's important to note, especially for our middle school families, to remind your students not to share snacks or lunches. Sometimes that gets to be a fun thing for kids to do. It's incredibly important that we remind them that they cannot share lunches or snacks during this time. We are looking at different ways to sanitize objects to make sure that our children are safe, but they can still participate in activities that are fun and will allow kinesthetic learning. So we will ensure that adequate supplies are available to minimize the sharing of highly touchable items. So what that will look like will be making sure that hands-on materials we have a number of them available, and we put them in individually wrapped Ziploc bags with the student's name on it, so that each day they are learning about math with counters, they have their own bag of counters with their name on it, and they're the only ones touching them. So we're looking at different ways to make sure that materials are available, and also ways to sanitize them. We are looking at providing separated spaces for individual students' belongings. At this time, we're thinking we won't be using lockers at the beginning of the school year. Individual cubbies in the classroom can still be used, and we're looking at making sure we have hooks that are spaced out some so that children can put their backpacks and lunch boxes on individual hooks. We're also have the ability to make sure that each student has their own laptop throughout the day in grade levels 2nd through 8th grade. And then in areas of the buildings, especially in our faith building, where electronic devices are needing to be shared, we'll make sure to keep that sharing to a minimum and put sanitation guidelines in place to make sure everybody stays safe. We also are going to take a look at toys, books, learning aids, all of those different areas. What can be sanitized, what we might need to wait on. Books are especially important to make sure that everybody can enjoy reading, but at the same time, not sharing a lot of books and putting them in a lot of different hands. Some of the things that we are still developing for our movement are certainly drop-off and pickup considerations. That will include everything from our morning supervision volunteers to our faculty and staff who have supervision in the morning to make sure children can come to the building safely. So we are continuing to develop those procedures to make sure everyone stays safe. We are looking at entry and exit points to the buildings. And then we're also taking a look at the hallways, recess, and changing classes. I talked about that a little bit. We are looking at limiting the amount of times we change classes, having teachers come into the classroom instead of children going to different classrooms. We know it's very important for children to have recess and to have PE. So we want to make sure that we have the ability for them to do that in a safe manner. Children need to move around and run, and so we want to make sure that they can do that while they're here at school. We're developing procedures to make sure they can do that safely. As far as the hallways, we're looking at different staggered dismissals so that there are not too many children in the hallway at any one time. There's a lot that goes on in cleaning the facilities, and so it's important to make sure that we are as thorough as possible. Some of the things listed here is talking to children and adults to remind them about the difference between routine cleaning and disinfecting. And so what we will be doing going forward is, the routine cleaning will always happen, but the disinfecting will ramp up a couple of steps here in the fall. Our custodian will frequently clean, and frequently means throughout the day, common surfaces, doorknobs, water bottle refill stations, light switches, and bathrooms. One thing that we will make sure is that water fountains are closed, except for the refill water stations. The student council had some additional money at the end of the year, and they were able to purchase 2 more water bottle refill stations so that each building, including the gym, has a water bottle refill station available. Teachers and students will wipe their own desks throughout the school day, and then please make sure that your students are bringing their own water bottles to school. PE equipment, we are still looking at different ways to share PE equipment, or just use different pieces for different grade levels and then sanitize them at the end of the day. Lots of different options there. As far as our after-school activities, we want to make sure that children still have the ability to pursue those interests that they have. And so Mrs. Lake will be speaking next about Mass, and she'll also talk about choir a little bit more. That has a special consideration that needs to be made for choir because of how we sing and the ability to spread germs a little more when we are singing. So she will talk about that a little bit more. Our sports for right now will be up and running, but Mrs. Kilburn, who is our athletic director, will be sure to continue to communicate with all of our 5th through 8th grade athletes and their families to talk to them about the protocols as they come up throughout the different sports seasons. Art, dance, chess, scouts, any of those different activities that will happen after school will have particular protocols depending on the activity. And so the administration here at Holy Family will work with those individual leaders and vendors to make sure that we stay safe after school as well. Mrs. Lake will talk to us next about Mass and choir.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about Mass and what we're going to be doing in the fall. Things will look different, which you are aware of already from your own church experiences this summer as we start opening up. So we're going to be following the guidelines that St. Vincent de Paul has established. Our goal is to go and have Mass at the church. And so when we enter, we will be required to wear our face masks and keep it on all throughout the Mass. They have sanitizer in the narthex that went right through the doors so that everybody can sanitize their hands. And we will, of course, maintain social distance and space between non-family members in the pews and other seating areas so that, if we have family members, say we have siblings in the same class, they can go ahead and sit closer together than non-siblings. When we go up for communion, which I'll show you in a minute, we will be distanced. There are crosses on the floor for you to stay 6 feet apart so that our communion line is just one line. And then when we exit, we will go from the last pew in the back of the church out the doors and all the way out, no stopping in the narthex. And the parish does ask that we have minimal access to the restrooms and the drinking fountains. So here is our map. I'm going to get a pointer here. And so we are going to be sitting every other pew. So if you notice, there's an arrow here and an arrow here, here, and so forth. So what the church has done is if you cannot sit in a pew, they have blocked it with tape. So from the back of this pew to the back of that pew would have tape over it. Helps us to know which pews that we're going to be in. So we sit in every other pew, and it's the opposite pews. So we have the front pew, second pew, third pew, fourth pew, etc. So that's how we will be sitting in Mass, and all the sections are situated the same so that we have one pew space in between sitting from front to back. When we go for communion, there are crosses on the floor that will guide us. We will walk down the cross from the crosses, stop at the end, bow at this point, and then go to the next minister that's available. So with this pew being the first pew with people in it, when we come out, the first person would bow and then go to this minister here. The second person would also come out and stand there and bow, but they would come over here to this minister. So if you come to the first minister, then you just go back around this way. If you go to the one minister on the other side, even if you started over here, then you go all the way around and then back. So that's it, one direction, no crossing paths. So if you're sitting on the side, the students that sit on the side, they do the same thing. They're coming down and going this way. Students in this section here, they will also come out, receive from this minister when it's their turn, because there will only be one minister at this point, and they will go around all the way. Oh, not into the choir area. Got a little exaggerated with that arrow there. And then the same thing over here. Of course, if you have questions about this, if you have not been inside St. Vincent de Paul to see this, please feel free to reach out to me. All right, so we'll come in the main doors, sit every other pew. We're trying to have our students be as safe as possible. And so as guidelines change in the church, we will let you know whether they are stricter or if they are more lenient and how things will change. When we celebrate Mass, we will have fewer students that are able to be involved because of our social distance needs and the safety of all. So we will only have one altar server at the beginning of the school year. I will be contacting those students that have served for the school before and check with them and their parents to have a discussion about whether they are comfortable serving at Mass. So there will be much less for the altar server to do, and there will not be a procession in. So let me find my pointer again. Father will just come from the sacristy over here and go straight up to the altar, and the altar server will already be seated back here. So there will not be the Father and the altar server walking together. I will be working with Father to get all those guidelines for the altar server. We will have one altar server for the month of September. We begin Mass on September 3rd. We'll have one altar server for the month of September, and then a different altar server for the month of October, and so on until we can have more students involved. Of course, we'll have just one lector. Our psalm for the beginning, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's see if I get back there. Our psalm, instead of being sung by a cantor, we are actually going to have it read. If we had it sung by a cantor, it would mean that nobody else got to sing. We would not be able to respond, which it's the responsorial psalm, and it is important for the students and the rest of the assembly to be able to interact and have that response. So we will have a student read it, and it may be a cantor that is reading it, but the psalm will not be sung. We will then also have just one petition reader, not a whole line of students. And If we do have a cantor, again, this is somebody that I will contact and have a discussion with them and their parents, beginning with the students that were cantors last year for our school masses. When we go to communion, as I mentioned on the other slide, we have a single file procession line spaced by the crosses on the floor. You enter one pew at a time, from one pew at a time, alternating the sides. So first pew, second pew, third pew, fourth pew, etc. on back. Bow at the end of the procession line before moving forward to the priest or the minister, and alternate which minister you go so that we are effectively unzipping to the next minister from our one line. Okay. When we are receiving, we will all receive on the hand. And so remember, you dominant hand underneath. And I encourage you to extend your hands out. Maybe I'll turn to the side just a little bit, see if I can continue this. Extend out and up so that you are maintaining that social distance between yourself and the priest or the minister. They will be wearing masks as they are serving you, but it is best practice just to keep that as much distance as possible. So as you go up, you will have your mask on. You'll walk up with your mask on, bow with your mask on, and then right before you put your hands up, you can remove your mask, extend your hands, say amen, receive Jesus, consume Jesus, and put your mask on as you are heading back to your pew. Hopefully that makes sense. Some of you may have already actually practiced that by going to Sunday Mass. I sure hope so. All right, so music during Mass is also limited at this time. We'll have a gathering song, but it will be sung just by the cantor. The psalm will be read. Gospel acclamation will be sung by the cantor. So instead of singing the Alleluia and having everybody repeat that, singing the verse and having everybody sing Alleluia again, the cantor will just sing straight through. Preparation of gifts. We will not be having gifts brought forward, again, for social distancing purposes. And the music will be either instrumental. I have invited our students that have, you will see that in the summer e-news, that there's an invitation for students to come and play their instruments at Mass. So be sure to look for that and talk to me if you are interested in doing that. Or myself or Mrs. Pish will play something on the piano. All of our Eucharistic acclamations will be recited, said. Communion will have an instrumental instead of sung, and sending forth again will be either instrumental or possibly a short song sung by the cantor. We will not be doing complete songs at this time, mainly because when we do a complete song, it's going to encourage our friends to sing, which is glorious. However, it's not safe for us right now. When things are more lenient and we can have small groups, then the music ministry will move to small groups. And I'm going to talk about that now. So before I get into the choir portion of it, let's talk about who's going to Mass where. So again, we have to keep social distancing. You saw that the pews are going to be marked off. We have to have space between our friends as we are sitting in the pews. So beginning September 3rd, grades 3 through 8 will be attending Mass at St. Vincent de Paul. They will be sitting in the pews appropriately spaced. Grades 1 and 2 will attend Mass, but in the school gym. We will, as we used to do before we started going to Mass at the church, have the gym transformed to reflect the importance of the Mass, including having our beautiful school altar set up. Students will be seated by class with good social distancing in place. They will, of course, yes, need to wear their masks, and we will live stream Mass from the church to the big screens on the gym. So we will all be attending the exact same Mass, but our first and second graders will attend it virtually. So here are the guidelines that I have to follow as the liturgy coordinator and choir director for the school. These come from the Office of Music and Worship of the Diocese of Austin. So this is just a partial list. So sadly, as you can see in my pictures, there is no big choir and there are no hymnals. You will not see hymnals in our pews, and nor will the children bring them to Mass with them. So we're doing this to avoid the spraying of droplets. When you sing, you get a lot more moisture and air expelled, and it goes a much greater distance. There are research studies being done right now, and one of them should be done within the next few weeks, and hopefully I'll have that information that will again help guide us as we move forward in both singing as well as instrument playing in terms of the wind instruments. So the diocese says that congregational singing is temporarily discouraged. Acclamations are to be recited, which means spoken. No hymnals in the pews. Instrumental music is encouraged at this time. So the sung word is what's most important. But during this time of pandemic in our world and trying to keep each other safe and healthy, instrumental music is encouraged. If we're to be present at Mass, they ask us to limit to one cantor and one accompanist. Occasionally, a scola, which is a small group of singers, may sing together if they're distance 8 to 10 feet apart. Face masks are to be worn when not singing, and the area is to be sanitized before and after Mass, and when in doubt, always err on the side of caution and health. So we will begin very, very small with cantor and accompanist, or accompanist and one student instrumentalist. We will begin small and work from there. We'll work together. Does this mean we're not having choir this year? Absolutely not. Choir is just going to look different. Not quite sure what that looks like yet, but I have all sorts of ideas running around in my brain. So grades 3 through 8 are still very welcome to sign up for choir. Some of the things that I've been thinking about are perhaps we will divide the choir into smaller groups for rehearsal. That might be by class, that might be by grade level. We still have to work those things out. Masks will be required at all times. So, can you sing with a mask on? Yes, absolutely you can. I can sing and so can you. Doesn't sound the best, but we can sing with masks on. But we will have to be spaced 8 to 10 feet in order to do that. So, what do we do to build our choir skills? We're going to be learning hymns and acclamations through rote, through listening, through echo speech, rhythmic games, humming, speaking, movement, art, other games that are beneficial to working on breath control, as well as your self-awareness and good choral posture. And that will help you in so many areas of school as well, knowing how good breathing techniques and posture techniques, and helping getting those hymns, which are prayers, into your body and your mind and your heart, and you can carry them with you and you can think them. And that is a great way that we are being asked to participate in the Mass, is to reflect on those words that we cannot sing right now. There is a possibility that we might be able to get those plastic face shields. That will open up some new possibilities. The ones that are being looked at are ones that go around the face, and that will give us a little bit more freedom to do a little bit more singing, but still just in small groups to start with. We will not be inviting the assembly to participate in singing, which is very hard, both as an assembly member as well as a music minister, but that's what we need for right now. And of course, we will continue evaluating what needs and safety issues are going on in our community, in the local community, in the church. We will be following science, diocesan guidelines, and research specifically about choral singing so that we can have the best opportunity to be safe and healthy while we are celebrating Mass. Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will do my best to either answer that question or find an answer for you. All right, I look forward to seeing you very soon. All right, next up, Mrs. Walker is going to come and talk to you about the beginning of the school year. She'll be right with you.
Hi, actually, it's Mrs. Laster, not Mrs. Walker. Mrs. Walker will join us in just a few minutes, but there are a few more things that I wanted to discuss with you before she talks about our health procedures for the school year. One of those things are the plans that we are making for our traditional beginning of the school year events that we have. We want to make sure that all of those events are still able to happen, but we also want to make sure that everyone is safe during that time. So beginning with August 13th, which is our orientation day, we would like to let everybody know that instead of coming to the gym like we usually do this year, the orientation will be live streamed from the gym. So you will stay home to watch it. There will only be one live stream event, and it'll be from 5 to 6 o'clock. We are looking at ways to make sure that everybody can come up and visit with their teachers sometime during that week. We're looking at different options of bringing small groups up at a time so that children can meet their teachers. And we'll let you know about that information as soon as we have it finalized. August 18th is still planning to be our first day of school, and we are hoping to be here on campus. That is our goal and that is our intent. But of course, should anything change with the governor of Texas, then we will let you know. August 25th, 26th, and 27th are back to school nights for our community. And those are nights when our teachers take some time to talk to parents about the curriculum, what the day in the life of your student looks like, and also some of the schedules and routines that they'll have. This year, our back to school nights are going to all be Zoomed so that you can watch those from your home. We also want to talk to you just a little bit about the learning options that we are looking at. Our first option and our option that we are really planning for and hoping for is that everyone can return to school. But we do understand that some families may not be able to send their children. There may be someone in the home that has a weakened immune system, and they may feel like that they want to keep their children home for a little longer. So if that's the case, we are also looking at options at learning from home. At this time, we are not planning to do a distance learning for all students at the beginning of the school year. Of course, that would have to change if the governor changes it, but our intent is for kids to come back to the school. But should you need an option for your children to learn from home, then we will have that option for you. We are looking at ways to make sure that there are two kinds of learning. Synchronous learning, which means that your children will be able to zoom in as the lesson is being taught. We are videotaping all of our lessons so that the children can be in the class at the same time. They'll just be viewing it from home. And then asynchronous learning is for those families who may need a different schedule because they have multiple children or both parents are working and the laptops there are not enough available there in the house for all the children to be on at the same time. So asynchronous learning allows families to go back and look at the taped versions of those lessons. And so we hope to have those options available for families who might need it. At the end of the survey, you'll have some opportunity to let us know if there are any other pieces that you think your family might need to make sure that this school year is very successful for your children.
We are in the process of hiring a nurse, so this person will become our point person. When to stay home and to self-isolate. If you are experiencing any of the following symptoms, you will need to self-isolate: fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, a sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or diarrhea. Another reason to self-isolate would be if you have tested positive for COVID-19 or you were exposed to someone with COVID-19 within the last 14 days. When should an employee or student be sent home? If a student, faculty, or staff member becomes ill at school, he or she will be sent home if he or she has symptoms and a fever between 99 and 99.9, if the fever is above 100 degrees, if only has a fever between 99 and 99.9, he or she will be checked every 30 minutes. If the fever increases, the student will be sent home. Now, if somebody has a fever and they are not COVID-19 have related conditions, and they have not been in contact with someone testing positive for COVID-19, we will follow the return policy as stated in the health manual, which is student and faculty and staff may return once he or she is symptom-free for 24 hours without the aid of medication. We will have a space designated to quarantine anyone exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. We will also have a separate space for students not feeling well that are not exhibiting signs of COVID-19. If a faculty, staff, or student tests positive for COVID-19, the school will be in communication with everyone who is in contact with the person testing positive. The school is required to notify all people in writing, as well as the Williamson County Health Department. And when are you able to return to school? If an individual was diagnosed with COVID-19, the individual may return when all three of the following criteria are met. At least 3 days have passed since recovery and there's no fever. The individual has improvement in symptoms and at least 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared. An additional guideline set by the CDC includes the following. Depending on your healthcare provider's advice and the availability of testing, you might get tested to see if you still have COVID-19. If you will be tested, you can be around others when you have no fever, symptoms have improved, and you receive 2 negative test results in a row, at least 24 hours apart. Any student, teacher, or staff member living with someone who experiences any of the symptoms of COVID-19, whether they have a positive COVID-19 test or not, should self-isolate until at least 3 days have passed since recovery and no fever, the individual has improvement in symptoms, and at least 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared. Again, these are just a few of the symptoms for screening for COVID-19. The cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, chills, repeated shaking with chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, loss of taste or smell, diarrhea, feeling feverish or a measured temperature greater than or equal to 100 degrees, known close contact with a person who is lab confirmed to have COVID-19. Every Monday, we will go through these pre-screening questions. Do you have a fever or any of the symptoms listed? Have you or anyone in your household tested positive for COVID-19? Have you had any known contact with someone who tested positive?
Hi, it's Mrs. Hinkle, and we're almost finished with the video. This second to the last page, we have a some resources that we thought might be helpful to you. So if you see something that you would like, just pause the video and you can copy the or write down the address. And the last thing that I wanted to say was we have a survey that we included in your email for the video, and we would encourage you to please take the survey, give us some answers. We are trying to use this information to continue our plans, to develop our plans and answer and meet any of your needs that you have. And I think the survey gives you a chance, an opportunity to let us know specific concerns that you have for your family. So all your responses, please know all your responses will be held confidential. We appreciate you listening to the video, and we hope that we answered a lot of your questions. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Bye-bye.